The Battle of Tuyutí was a Paraguayan offensive in the Paraguayan War, targeting the Triple Alliance encampment of Tuyutí. The result of the battle was an Allied victory which added to the Paraguayan troubles that began with earlier failed offensives and the loss of its fleet in the Battle of Riachuelo. Another attack on the Allied camp was made in November 1867. Strategic situation. In this phase of the war, the Allies' strategic objective was to take the fortress of Humaita, the gateway to Paraguay. They intended to launch an amphibious operation, which required their land forces to take the fortress from the rear. After crossing the Parana River from Argentina and landing in Paraguay, they had a long march across country studded with lagoons and carousel. The fortress was defended by the extensive earthworks of its polygonal or quadrilateral design. It was in this context that the Battle of Tuyutí occurred. Preliminaries. In early May 1866, the Paraguayan attack at the Estero Bellico marsh failed. The Allies camped for over 2 weeks before resuming their advance on 20 May 1866. Paraguayan leader Francisco Solano López moved his headquarters to Pasapucu, where he dug trenches in the passes from Gómez to Rojas. After learning that the Allied army planned to attack on the 25th, López ordered a surprise attack on Tuyutí, a swampy, scrub-brush savanna. On May 24, the 24th of May 1866 Battle of Tuyutí is known as the First Battle of Tuyutí. The Second Battle of Tuyutí occurred on the 7th of November 1867. Battle. The Paraguayans attacked in 3 columns at 11:55 after a Congreve rocket signaled the attack. Gen. Vicente Barrios, with 8,000 infantry and 1,000 cavalry, attacked the Allied left, which were Brazilians under the command of Gen. Osorio. Gen. Isidoro Rescan, with 7,000 cavalry and 3,000 infantry, attacked the Allied right flank. Col. José Díaz, with 6,000 infantry and 1,000 cavalry, attacked the Old Center. Gen. Flores Vanguard Division. Col. Hilario Marco, with 7,000 men and 48 cannons, was held in reserve at Estero Rojas. The attack began in the center, where the Uruguayans were forced back along with some Brazilian volunteer battalions. On the left of the Allied encampment, Captain Emilio Mallet had ordered the construction of a large moat in front of his artillery pieces. When the Paraguayan onslaught reached it, they were in grapeshot range and unable to cross the obstacle. The Paraguayans tried to circle the artillery, avoiding the incoming fire, but encountered Antonio Sampaio's 3rd Infantry Division. This unit fought desperately in the muddy terrain, with its commander dying in the process, having fought stubbornly. At this point, Osorio ordered his reserves to attack and repel the Paraguayan center. On the Allied left, the Paraguayans forced back the few Brazilian units, almost reaching the Allied camp. Osorio reinforced the Brazilian lines with various units, finally committing the 2nd Cavalry Division, commanded by General Mena Barreto. The Paraguayans continued to attack until they were encircled and annihilated. In the Argentine sector, the Paraguayan cavalry under Gen. Rescan routed the Argentine cavalry under Gens. Caceres and Hornos. Soon the battle turned into a series of charges and countercharges, a Latin American version of Waterloo. The Paraguayan columns continued to attack, but could not overcome the Allied firepower. In the words of Colonel Thompson of the Paraguayan Army, who was there, at 4 p.m., the firing was over, the Paraguayans being completely defeated, and their army destroyed. The Allies had suffered severely also, but they still had an army left. The Paraguayans left 6,000 dead on the field. The Allies only took some 350 prisoners, all wounded. This was because the Paraguayans would never surrender, but, when wounded, fought on till they were killed. 7,000 wounded were taken into the Paraguayan hospitals from this battle, those with slight wounds not going into hospital at all. The Allies lost above 8,000 killed and wounded. Aftermath. As battles result, both sides' losses were. There's contradictions over the casualties numbers in debate ever since. For Centurion, the Paraguayans killed were about 5,000, maybe more, and the wounded 7,000, while the Allies had been 8,000, between killed and wounded. Thompson agreed with the Paraguayans' wounded number, but affirmed that were killed 6,000. Other authors gave different number. The Paraguayans killed would be 6,500 in Barreto's opinion, for whom the Allied casualties were 3,647, with 3,011 Brazilians. For Silva Pimentel were killed 7,000 Paraguayans. Rawson and Beverina affirmed that were 7,000 Paraguayans killed and so many others wounded, while the Allied casualties were 4,000. Osorio's Order of the Day affirmed that the killed Paraguayans were more than 3,000, with 200 wounded and 21 prisoners. According to this document, Brazilian casualties were 412 killed and 2,003 wounded. Tuyutí was the last major Paraguayan attack. Ultimately, it was a devastating Paraguayan defeat. The 10,000 men who had not been killed or seriously wounded were completely scattered and disorganized, and it was some days before they were again collected, wrote Thompson. The Allies buried some of their own dead, but they heaped up the Paraguayan corpses in alternate layers, with wood, in piles of from 50 to 100, and burnt them. They complained that the Paraguayans were so lean that they would not burn. The largest battle ever fought in South America had just ended. Lopez's flanking maneuver had failed, but it had been very close to succeeding. In fact, the Allies were unable to pursue the enemy due to the few horses they had remaining. They needed to regain strength and rebuild. The Allied forces stayed in their camp until Sept. Starvation and disease struck the Allied camp, claiming some 10,000 victims. Carl Malay's hidden ditch, Fossa de Mallet, was the inspiration for Malay's famous battle cry, Por aqua na entram. The Brazilian 3rd Division suffered enormous casualties while their commander, Gen. Sampaio, shouted, Fogo, Batalhão.